All right, let's do this together. Hopefully by now you used your code for your hour and wrote down your username and password and have your screen open side by side with the pond ecosystem where you created your own account on one side and the directions on the other side. So prior knowledge. For this, you would do this without doing the gizmo yet, without doing the lab. All animals need oxygen. We get oxygen from the air we breathe. Where do fish get theirs? Well, I think that fish get their oxygen from the water. There's dissolved oxygen in the water. Where does the fizz and soda come from? Well, I know that they carbonate soda, so they put carbon dioxide in our water. Carbon dioxide in the pop. Okay, so again, those are just making guesses, thinking about it before you start. The warm-up. The pond ecosystem lets you study ponds as an ecologist would. Each of the tools can be dragged to the pond to take measurements. Just as soda contains dissolved carbon dioxide, pond water contains dissolved oxygen. The unit for measuring the concentration or the amount of an oxygen is parts per million. Drag the oxygen gauge to the pond. What is the concentration of oxygen? So I take the tool and drag it into the pond, and the amount is 4.04 ppm. And ppm stands for parts per million. So I would type that in the box by double tapping on the box and typing in there. Then it says, drag the fishing pole to the pond, click play, and fish for about 4 hours. So again, when I take my fishing pole up to the pond, and then I'm going to hit play, and the timer is going. So there's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Oh, I noticed the dissolved oxygen is going up. There's 4 hours. Right there, 10 o'clock. 6 to 10 is 4 hours. And it says, how many catfish did you catch? Well, I have 2 catfish in my bucket. How many trout? 0. Now, if you have a different setup than what my pond is, yours may look a little different than this, but this is the initial starting pond. So then the next part is our activity a day in the life of a pond. So I'm going to click reset, which is this button here, and remove the fishing pole from the pond. The fish in a pond are affected by biotic factors such as other fish, aquatic plants, insects, and bacteria. They are also affected by abiotic factors, or the non-living factors such as temperature and the concentration of dissolved oxygen. So our big question is, how does the amount of dissolved oxygen in a pond change during one day? So make an observation. Use the oxygen gauge to measure the concentration of dissolved oxygen at several different times. How does the oxygen change over a single day? Now I remember from the last time when we were watching it, as the day went on, I believe the dissolved oxygen went up. We can hit the double arrows and it goes in much faster pace. And look at that. Stop. So what I have observed is over a single day, the concentration of oxygen increases. So the take the time to type that in. Oops, I spelled concentration wrong. Love auto check. Okay, the next question. Predict at what time should the amount of oxygen in a pond be the lowest? Well, it looks like when I start the day, it's lower and it goes up. So I'm going to predict that it is 6 a.m. Double tap in the box and put an X in it. The next test, to measure the dissolved oxygen at 4 times during the day, 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and 12 a.m. midnight. Then click New Pond and repeat the test for 2 more ponds. Record your results in the table below. So for this particular one, you may have different ponds than what I choose, and that is okay. So for pond 1, I am going to click New Pond. And this pond has no farm, so that's my first pond I am going to use. And I have dissolved oxygen, and that is what I am measuring. And so I am going to measure at 6 a.m., which is on the time right now, 6 a.m. And it looks like my dissolved oxygen is 5.21 parts per million. And now I'm going to run it until noon, and I'm going to hit those double buttons to see what happens. All right, so at noon, I am up to 6.76 parts per million. Again, depending on your pond, you're going to have different results. All right, now we'll go till 6 p.m. It doesn't have to be exact, it can be close. And I have 8.15 parts per million. Makes me wonder, why would it go up? Is it the sun, or is it something going on in the water that causes it to go up? Because it drops at night when there is no sun. All right, let's see what happens when we get to midnight. It's dark out, and it looks like it's going down. Oops, I missed my window of time there, but that's all right, close enough. I'm going to put, even though it's not 12 a.m., it's 1 a.m. because I missed it. I'll just record. Try to end closer to the time if you can, but if not, close enough. It is your test. All right, so that's this pond. And then what you'll do on your own is you will pick some new ponds. And I know there's lots of different ponds. Look at that one. There's all those farms. The water looks a little brown. That might be a fun one to test. That water looks green. That water looks blue. So just go through. If you want to pick one, I can select no farms. But pick 3 different ponds and measure. So for all 3 ponds, you have to analyze, was your prediction correct for all 3 ponds? So my prediction was around when was the dissolved oxygen the lowest. So was it the lowest at 6 a.m. for all 3 ponds, or whatever time you said. So that's what you'll do for number 4. Number 5, draw conclusions. The dissolved oxygen in a pond is produced by pond plants and algae, some small plant-like organisms, in a process called photosynthesis. Oh, look at that. That's why it goes up during the day, because the sun is out and plants need the sunlight for photosynthesis. That's what makes them green. At what time of day does photosynthesis take place? It takes place when the sun is out. So what time of day does the sun out? Well, it looks like it's 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. So we can type that in. 6 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. What is the source of energy present during this time? Well, we talked about photosynthesis, and plants use the sunlight to carry out photosynthesis. All plants use sun for their energy. So the source of energy at this time of day is the sunlight. Is the sun. Next question. Why does the level of dissolved oxygen go down after sunset? So that one, I'll let you have a chance to think about it. We talked about the sun, and the sun goes down, and what do plants need for the sun? And so that's what you'll talk about and respond in this final box. The last one. How did the abiotic factors of oxygen and temperature affect the number of fish in the pond? Well, I'm going to have to go back and do some more tests for that one. So I'm going to go back over here, and I guess I did not put the thermometer in the water or the fishing pole. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run some more tests with those items. I guess you just have to throw the fishing pole up. And I'm going to take this one, and I think I might go back up and do the same ponds I did up here. And I wish I would have had the fishing pole and the thermometer in for those, but we'll just run them again and see what happens. So how does the abiotic factors of oxygen and temperature affect the number of fish? So in this pond, I'm going to run it and see how many fish I get. So it looks like my temperature during the day is going up. My dissolved oxygen is going up. I have a lot of catfish. All right, I'm going to stop there, refresh. I'm going to take this same pond and I'm going to say no farms and run the same experiment and see what happens to my temperature and my dissolved oxygen. So it looks like my temperature and my dissolved oxygen is much higher, and it looks like I caught a lot more fish. So how did the abiotic factors of oxygen and temperature affect the number of fish? Well, do you catch more fish when it's warm or cold? Do you catch more fish when the dissolved oxygen is higher or lower? So you might have to do a few more tests and figure that out. The next question, how did the number of farms affect the biotic factors, the fish, and the abiotic factors, dissolved oxygen? Well, it looks like when I did not have the farms, I caught a lot more fish. But I'm going to have to do a few more tests and look at the dissolved oxygen. So then you'll make those experiments and answer the question. If you are interested, you can also go down here where you collect data fishing. That might be helpful to answer this question. This will guide you through some different things you could do for that to really get a good understanding for the question around how did the oxygen and temperature affect the fish in the pond. If there's more fish, I'll catch more fish. So that will be that part. And C is dissolved oxygen. So now this is going to see how the dissolved oxygen affect the number of fish. So those are some things that you're going to look at, you're going to play around with, and do some different tests, collect some data, and answer those questions.